Salutations, ghouls and freaks. Welcome to this podcast of Stormlord, insane slashers, undead blood drinkers, and all around crooked beans and bean talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the Mage of Madness, aka the Theater, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Good evening. We finally made it, folks. It's October. We did it. We made it. The good times roll from here on.
And I'm your host, Scarecrow impersonator, the brain from pop culture. How's everyone doing?
I really fucking needed it to be October already. Seriously. I really desperately am happy that we made it. September was just a fucking nightmare, and I'm glad it's over.
Alright, while we're just waiting for the console to load. But yeah, I'm gonna be fully honest. It does take me like maybe a week or so from like fully invested in October.
Sometimes it does me too, but not this year. Like as soon as midnight rolled around last night, I was already firing up the Marilyn Manson version of This Is Halloween.
It isn't really helping that I still have my fan in the window and it's actually relatively warm on that, so.
Yeah. The dog days of summer, as they call it.
Yeah. So most of this stuff, like, actually, it's pretty even week for us, to be fully honest.
Yeah, because you ended up with 3 slots. I ended up with 1. I think.
No, you have 2. I have 2.
Oh right, I guess because we're saving one of the trailers for next week.
Yeah.
Okay. And rest assured, in terms of the holiday related, or in most cases anti-holiday cringe, we're softly easing you into it. It gets worse from here, folks.
Mhm.
Some of the
It's,
articles we have planned for next week are a bit doozies.
so this is from Good Housekeeping. This one don't I want that to be fully recognized.
Hmm.
This is from GoodHousekeeping.com. 15 offensive Halloween costumes that shouldn't exist. Written by Marcy Robin and Liz Schumer. Updated September 25th, 2023. This was relatively recently.
Yeah, I tried to make sure most everything was as current as possible, so it wasn't a case of revisiting stuff we've already done. But
Mhm.
pro tip for you, oh writer of this article, Halloween is kind of by its very nature on some level supposed to be risque and offensive. It's Halloween on very much at its core is a transgression of the light, as in embracing the dark, the creepy, the macabre, the spooky, the you know making a friend of death, etc., and so on. That's what Halloween is
Mhm.
for. It it's basically the counterpart to Christmas, where Christmas is all about wholesomeness and hearth and home and yada 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 and finding the light in the darkness. Um, Halloween is about a period where we both respect and, on some level, admire the darkness and find that there needs to be some level of balancing the dark and the light. You can't just have all wholesomeness all the time because that leads to Stepford and Pleasantville and or Westview to be more like recently topical. Like you, Halloween is specifically about being creepy, being gross, being dark, being witchy, being offensive, etc., and so on. So the very notion of the idea of there are some costumes that are too offensive to exist on how relating to Halloween, it tells me that you don't really know or care enough about the purposes of Halloween. Period. Moving on.
Okay. You're the only one in on the joke, then it's probably not very funny. It's a subheading for
Um,
that.
Again, no. Halloween is a time specifically about dark, macabre, morose, offensive irreverence. So, on some level, being an iconoclast around Halloween is kind of the entire freaking point. It, Halloween is very much, on some level, again, obviously hashtag not all or hashtag not complete, but um, on some level, Halloween is there specifically for thumbing your nose at the traditional benign and benevolent parts of existence and taking a sacred or sanctioned walk on the wild side for once. That's what Halloween is. So not only is the very premise of your article wrong, but even that statement is wrong. If you're the only one in on the joke, and other people are scared or appalled or uncomfortable with your joke, I'm not saying that's necessarily what you're supposed to do on Halloween, but it's certainly in line with the spirit of Halloween on some level. More so than being moralistically prudish and clutching your pearls about it is. But moving forward.
Unless you're a total ghoul, you probably get at least a little bit excited about Halloween. Dressing up in fun Halloween costumes, eating all the candy you can borrow from the kids, carving a pumpkin, and then crossing your fingers that squirrels don't eat it before the trick or treaters come. What's not to like?
How did you describe Halloween without once admitting the dark, spooky, inherently, again, the inherently irreverent or like chthonic nature of it? I think that might be part of your problem. You like the superficial trappings of Halloween, but you don't actually think about how it fits together or what actually the spirit that underlines it is. You want to be able to engage with Halloween and still be a fucking prude. That's that's not how the game works. That's not how this festival has operated for literal millennia. Thank you. Fuck off.
But as we all start brainstorming our Halloween attire and celebrations for 2023, consider this your annual reminder to make sure the spectacular outfits you've got in mind won't rain on anyone else's parade. Every year, at least a handful of people, celebrities very much included, manage to come up with some very cringeworthy, harmful, and offensive Halloween costumes that ruin the good vibe. And it can happen where you least expect it.
Again, cringeworthy is usually something we reserve for moralistic fuddy-duddy prudishness which is far more descriptive of what you're doing than what people do when they transgress you. And moreover, being harmful and offensive, again, on some level, in the sense of like rebellious iconoclastic irreverence, is the fucking point. So you want a Halloween celebration where your sensibilities never get brushed up against or offended. No, these two states simply don't go together. You can't have both. You can't have a Halloween celebration that doesn't remind you basically of your own essentially moral insignificance to the world. That's part of why we do this. That's part of the balance of Halloween and Christmas. Like again, Christmas is hearth and home and tradition and family and wholesomeness and light and yada 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 and finding the light in the darkness. Halloween is about irreverence, iconoclasm, uh, embracing the dark, the chthonic, the like sublunar and the macabre. And one, the phrase that comes to mind is memento mori. It's supposed to bring you closer to some semblance of your mortality and make you be okay with it. And two, um, and two, it's supposed to allow you to embrace the dark side, what psychologically gets referred to as the shadow. Your problem, my dear, seems to be, or at least the mindset that you are advocating in this article, the problem with it seems to be that you want to have the cachet of celebrating Halloween without ever coming up against the idea that you might be insignificant or wrong in the grand scheme of things. And I'm not saying you have to go hardcore left-hand path for Halloween, certainly no, but at least the underlying ethos of Halloween is very much it's very much supposed to be on some level a rebellious, irreverent, and and dark and twisted holiday. Taking that out of Halloween sort of misses the point. In the same way that taking the light and wholesomeness out of Christmas would also kind of be missing the point. Which isn't to say there isn't a dark side to Christmas, because, you know, Krampus, the Yule Cat, um, the pre-existing Yule celebrations, and so on. But it's very much the same thing, because Halloween and Christmas both come from pre-Christian celebrations, and in pre-Christian, especially polytheistic celebrations, it wasn't just as simple as light and dark. It wasn't a duality. It was there's a little bit of both in everything. Obviously, the focus is different because again, the majority of the focus in Halloween is on the darkness, and the majority of the focus for Yule or Christmas is on the light, but they exist to balance each other. In order to have the wholesomeness of Christmas, you need the iconoclastic, irreverent deadliness of Halloween. Moving on.
Well, we'll get into the details below, but in brief, tragic events like mass shootings, natural disasters, and pandemics should never be used as inspiration for Halloween costumes. This line of
So,
tragedies to remind. Hold on.
mhm.
I feel like I have to finish the whole thing, so we have full
Yeah,
context.
finish the thing, and then I'll go.
Making light of tragedies to remind others of trauma they've endured, and that's no laughing matter. Neither is cultural appropriation. Nationalist subcultures you don't belong to aren't costumes. They're real ways of life that deserve respect.
Okay, a couple things, and this is why I wanted to break it up. But so what you're saying is you can't actually make a costume out of anything that scares people or rubs them the wrong way. Have you forgotten what holiday we're talking about? 2, what if the people in those cultures like the irreverent joking at their expense on occasion? Not to mention that, for example, festivals like Day de los Muertos have become popular specifically because someone noticed the connections between Day de los Muertos and Halloween. Are you going to deny them their cultural exposure because we don't want to be appropriating now? Everyone has to be in their own historical rabbit cage and never interacting with each other. Because here's the thing. Even if you are okay, even if you would lionize the idea of multiculturalism, multiculturalism only works when cultures are allowed to cross-pollinate, when they're allowed to interact with each other, when they're allowed to compare notes with each other and pick and choose the parts of each other's cultures that they like best. Because otherwise what you have is everyone is locked in their own personal little bubble and no one is ever allowed to interact with anyone else or anything else outside of their culture. And again, given that Halloween is very much about the breaking down of barriers and breaking down of boundaries, hell, the original like metaphysical justification for Samhain, which is the proto Halloween, was literally the veil between dimensions, especially the ones between the realm of the gods or the realm of the nature spirits and the realm of the living and the dead, are weakening at this time period. It's what's, again, in like psychological terms, referred to as a liminal time or a liminal space. And you're trying to rob Halloween of that liminality because, God forbid, someone should do something scary or offensive on Halloween. Not to mention that many people who have gone through something traumatic learn to get over it by seeing it in an irreverent or humorous way. It's almost a sign of I can wear the face of something that terrifies me because it holds less power over me now. I.e., you will find that at least some of the people who tell rape jokes will be former rape victims who have gotten the fuck on with their lives. And this too you find to be morally objectionable. I think I can speak for all parties concerned when I say double fuck you, madam. Moving on.
Here are some specific examples of tasteless and inappropriate Halloween costumes you should take care to avoid this year and every year. Instead, we recommend choosing a fun, silly group costume or a scary costume that won't make someone relive a traumatic event. What? Oh, that's what made no fucking sense.
Go ahead.
That's it. That's it.
Okay, yeah, one, given that one of the things Halloween is about, again, one of, not all, but given that one of the things Halloween is about is darkness and fear, banning scary things from Halloween is a bit like banning wholesomeness from Christmas. You will on some level neuter the core of this holiday if you don't let it function in the way it's supposed to. It's supposed to be scary. As much as I get annoyed when people overhumanize Halloween and focus more on human evils around Halloween rather than supernatural ones, because I do think that it loses something in translation. There is a reason why you see just as many, if not more, Michael Myers's, Jason Voorhees's, and like Hannibal Lecter's around Halloween than you do witches and ghouls and goblins, because in the Middle Ages, witches and ghouls and goblins were something people genuinely were afraid of, but in the modern pop culture parlance, very often our evils wear a human face or something approximating a human face. Obviously, with characters like Freddy Krueger, it gets stretched a little bit, but you get my point. And so, just by that, or even a better example, there's albeit annoying, there is a connection between the popularity of zombies and the post-nuclear hysteria of the 1950s. Just like there's a connection between the post-nuclear hysteria of the 1950s and Godzilla. Because on some level, people found something inherently horrifying about the way the world was going at that time, and so they combined existing fears like necromancy and The Walking Dead with nuclear hysteria. Now, again, I would argue that something got lost in translation, and I would like to see the return of the necromancy zombie. But just like Cesar Romero gave the necromantic zombie a nuclear makeover because it was topical and actually touched on a fear people actually had, and just like those in Japan created Godzilla out of a collective fear of the nuke, so too, as time goes on, as new history gets made, new events will become the face of horror. And in a world where everyone under the sun has some connection with the concept of locking down to escape a virus, then certainly you will get the occasional topical reference in people's costumes. Again, on some level, you will never get rid of the witches and ghosts and goblins because that is the core of Halloween. But as new vectors of fear are pointed out to humanity, some people will find that those things more frightening than the classical supernatural examples. Moving on.
Number one of a 15-member list. A Holocaust victim.
Okay. Obvious question.
Hold on. Let me. I want to read the. Sorry, I want to read the description you have here. So.
I will withhold my obvious question then.
Sorry. Believe it or not, more than one celebrity has thought that dressing up as a Nazi following was a good idea. And trick-or-treating as a Holocaust victim is just as bad. Several retailers have previously come under fire for selling an Anne Frank costume for little girls. Many places pulled it off the shelves after customers complained, but others still offer similar looks under the names World War II evacuee girl or 1940s girl historic costume. The Holocaust is a painful historical event, not costume party. Yeah.
Okay, a couple things. The obvious question that I was withholding is, what if a Jewish person, like, what if someone who's actually descended from a Holocaust survivor wants to go as a Holocaust victim? And again, back to the point I made previously. Given that on some level, Halloween is about acknowledging and learning to live with our worst fears, or the worst the world has to offer. Is it wrong that at least some people think of the worst thing they can imagine and immediately jump to a genocide? Because, again, I want to point this out. On some level, again, not all and not completely, but on some level, Halloween is about memento mori. It's coming face to face with darkness and violence and death. And in that way, why wouldn't you expect a zombie or a Holocaust survivor or a Nazi to make an appearance? Given, like you say, it is a relatively, obviously, almost a century ago now, but relatively recent artifact in our cultural memory. To some people, especially groups or people who are descended from or themselves survived Nazi regimes, to some people, a Nazi is the face of evil. And the human grotesquerie of a emaciated Holocaust victim is the repercussions of said evil. And on some level, embracing and weaponizing the grotesque is part of Halloween. Therefore, if to some people the emaciated bodies of a Holocaust victim are the scariest thing they can imagine, and the way that they would come face to face with the worst aspects of the world or humanity, yes, you would definitely expect them to be somewhere in a Halloween celebration. Again, I'm biased because I prefer the good old-fashioned supernatural iterations of such, but even there, you're not entirely bereft of options because the Nazis were crazy, fucked up occult nut jobs. So even 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 in terms of tying somehow into the supernatural, Nazis and their victims have some kind of vibe. So again, it very much seems like you forgot what Halloween was about on some level, and you get morally prudish and offended by things that scare you, which honestly makes you exactly the kind of person who needs to see these kind of things on Halloween. The more people who get prudishly offended at the image of a Holocaust victim, the more effective the Holocaust victim is as a symbol of fear and the symbol of death. It's supposed to bring you close. It's supposed to bring you closer to death in a safe, consensual, semi-whimsical format. That's what Halloween's for on some level. Hence, not only are you wrong here, but you're directly inverting the purpose of Halloween. You should go as things that make you slightly uncomfortable on some level, or make someone, or that are likely to make someone uncomfortable on some level, because that's sort of what Halloween is for. Again, not all and not always, but on some level. Moving on.
And two, anything involving blackface.
Again, if it offends you and it makes you morally hysterical, that is on some level what Halloween is supposed to be for. And insofar as that's what it's supposed to be for, trying to ban it is going to be counterproductive.
Blackface is never okay, never ever, under any circumstances. Yes, the offensive practice includes literally painting your face a shade other than your natural skin tone, but it also goes deeper than that. Dressing up in outfits that reinforce racist stereotypes also counts as blackface. For example, if you identify as a white person, it's good to avoid stereotyping any other culture that aren't yours. Even if you tend to pay homage to a specific person, that means also providing caricatures like Julianne Hughes' Crazy Eyes costume and Luan de Lesseps than Ross costume.
Again, you're missing the point because on some level, every face you put on for Halloween is a caricature of something. Secondly, I'm going to give you an example that's going to conclusively prove that you're wrong here. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that me and my friend Mr. E2099, who happens to be black, go trick-or-treating together. Now, granted, I'm in my late 20s and he is in his early 30s, so this would be implausible. But let's say maybe we go to a costume party, and I go in blackface and he goes in whiteface. And the point of the costume is supposed to be a contrast. It's supposed to be each of us wearing each other's stereotypes. Would that be okay? Because specifically, um, we have the contrast there, and it's supposed to, on some level, be making fun of the practice of blackface and whiteface. If you would say yes, then you just admitted that you're wrong. If you would say no, then you're taking away the potential agency of actual black people who would choose to go in whiteface. Or are you saying the other possible stupid thing, which is it's okay for black people to go in whiteface or other culture face, but not white people to go in blackface? Because that would, in fact, be a racial double standard, otherwise known as racism. Now, this is just hypothetical. I would probably not go in blackface just because, frankly, I don't think it's that amusing. But I'm just saying, for the sake of argument, if the purpose of the costume is to build camaraderie between two friends who happen to be of different races, would that be an exception to your rule? If yes, then you're wrong. If not, then you are removing the agency of people of different races for no good reason, which is in and of itself racist.
So yeah, I'm sorry, Ahsoka. I was on the other tab and I did not see your. So yeah. So hello, Sartan. Good to see you. And yeah, I'm sorry. I just now am seeing your things. I was not on the same tab. So that's my bad. I think most of this is regarding like, the first thing, the first on the list, like the Holocaust costume. Yeah.
Which trend, Ahsoka? Which trend started on TikTok?
Uh,
Oh, the Holocaust victim thing. I mean, I'm sure people went as Holocaust survivors before TikTok, and I'm sure they will long after TikTok is scrubbed from the internet like it deserves to be. But
no, wait, hold on. Hold on. I'm trying to read through these like kind of clips. They're not. People were telling stories like they were Holocaust victims and dressing like Holocaust. It's dumb. Yeah, but again, I'm sorry. It's okay if I didn't use things while they were popping up. That's my bad. Where would I start here?
in fairness, Ahsoka, there's folklore of risen corpses or the undead in just about every culture, and it's pretty much existed for as long as humans have had a notion of death, I would imagine. Both the folklore behind it and the real world magic that people are engaged with that are the origins of various kinds of necromancy. And there's even evidence to suggest that Homo habilis, one of humanity's primate ancestors, actually buried their dead. So it's very, very possible indeed that the notion of the undead goes back further than even the human species. Anyway, back to the list.
Right. Okay. Number 3, transphobic costumes.
Okay, the fuck? Because
It's just a guy in like one of those like stereotypical like I don't even know granny costume.
but okay, drag perform. Okay, I'm very confused where this person is standing because, frankly,
You want me to read the?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay. If your outfit makes fun of a marginalized group of people, it's definitely a no-go. Take this training granny costume, for example. It got pulled from Walmart shelves after customers pointed out that not only does it make a joke out of a transgender woman, it also uses a transphobic slur right in the name. Dressing up as a gender presentation other than your own is not like, oh my god, especially not when trans rights spread across the country.
They're not. They're definitely not. But that's neither here nor there. I'm here to defend Halloween from your moralistic besmirchment, my dear. And first of all, just for the record, I'm speaking as a gay guy. A gay guy who has several friends who are trans and or non-binary, but that's neither here nor there. Where exactly are you coming from, my dear? Because if this is indeed wrong, then you just morally threw the entire drag phenomena under the bus. Now, granted, there are certain things about the current drag phenomena that probably should be thrown under some kind of bus somewhere. Cough, cough, trans kids, cough, cough, drag queen story hour, cough. But drag as a performance has existed for centuries. Not to mention the idea of comedic drag has existed specifically even longer probably than that. Think of Bugs Bunny getting one over on Elmer Fudd by dressing as a pretty hunter. Think of Big Mama or Medea or Mrs. Doubtfire, or like the list goes on and on forever. As well it very much freaking should. Are you basically morally invalidating the entire drag phenomenon? Or is it somehow magically okay to do drag as long as you don't do it in relation to Halloween? Because I don't want to Halloween-splain this again, but not saying costumes are the most important part of Halloween or anything, but if there's a time in human history when costumes are definitely okay, it is most definitely Halloween. So if you are throwing drag under the bus, then good luck dealing with the social justice backlash from that, considering many people, both, all across the LGBT spectrum, are very, very protective of drag shows, and drag as an art form. And if you're not throwing drag under the bus, but you're specifically throwing costumes around Halloween under the bus, then you are so delusional that I don't even think you can be argued with. Because I literally can't explain to you just how many layers of fucked up it is that you would be okay with drag any other time except Halloween. That's just so many levels of wrong, I can't even explain it fully. Moving on.
Right. Okay. Number 4, COVID-19 pandemic. Who the fuck would? Okay, one. Who the fuck would wear costumes?
People
One.
do, because it's topical. Most people who do it want to make fun of how stupid COVID was, and I support that, frankly.
Okay, fair enough. I just think it's a waste of
No,
effort
it
and
it
money.
it is a very stupid, very white bread, very basic bitch costume, and it kind of misses the point of Halloween. But I can sort of see where it's coming from. And speaking of being able to see where it's coming from, my dear, not only are you wrong for reason of what I previously explained about the zombie thing and or the nuclear thing, but you're wrong just based on the fact that um using sickness as a Halloween costume is not even a very modern phenomenon. Like one of the earliest semi-historical Halloween costumes there is the Black Plague Doctor. As in, people have been making fun of sickness using the Black Plague pretty much since the Black Plague ended, and probably before then. If we're being entirely honest with ourselves. So, like, not only are you wrong for topical political, relevance reasons, but you're wrong for precedent reasons, considering we've been making fun of the Black Plague pretty much since the Black Plague, and yet you want to make COVID a no-go zone. No, because again, as I explained previously, one of the things Halloween is for, and I do stress the one of, it's not the only thing Halloween is for, but one of the things Halloween is for is basically a celebration of the idea of memento mori, remembering that you have to die, confronting death. And one of the ways people do that is with topical um, recent phenomena. Again, think of how Romero gave the zombie, which was previously supernatural in nature, a nuclear makeover, or think of how Japan created the kaiju genre in response to getting nuked. Um, or again, think of how we've been making fun of the Black Plague using this kind of thing for many, many centuries now. So it's only natural that one of the most recent rushes humanity at large had with death would then become a Halloween costume, especially given that COVID is mostly now over, or at the very least, the fear mongering has ceased for the most part. Um, yeah, especially given that this affected basically the entire first world and majorly impacted people's lives, regardless of whether it had to or not, is a different question. But I find it kind of silly that you simultaneously want to fearmonger about how awful COVID is, but if people use that fear as a basis for a Halloween costume, that's somehow, according to you, morally beyond the pale. Fuck off. Moving on.
And so the thing of it, a pandemic that has killed over 1 million people and rising in the United States alone is an atrocity. It's a horrible tragedy that has significantly impacted many people's lives. Resist the urge to dress up as a medical hazard to anything resembling a virus or as a victim of the virus itself. This category is one where specific specificity really matters. Generic doctor and nurse costumes are fine. Specific gimmicks that reference the pandemic in particular, not so much. Oh, shut the fuck up.
Sweetheart, what you just described is exactly why COVID is a good costume. The fact that it is a recent tragedy, the fact that it did affect most people's lives, the fact that it does embody a recent brush that humanity had on some level with death. That's what Halloween is for, my dear. Seriously. Do you not? Do you? Halloween, motherfucker, do you speak it? That's where I'm at with you. Do you even know what this holiday is for? And has been for literal millennia. Halloween as a festival is older than fucking Christianity as a religion. And yet you seemingly want to authoritate on what Halloween should be without having any understanding of the underlying ethos behind it. It fucking pisses me off, frankly. Your entire argument here is basically, well, it's too soon. And yet, the fact that it's fresh in people's minds is exactly what makes it a good costume for the foreseeable future. Just like Romero giving the zombie a nuclear makeover in the 50s, just after, the Cold War and or during the Cold War. Just like
the movie was in Night of the Living Dead was the 60s.
Yeah.
So during the Cold War.
Yeah, but point being, it's not like using modern day trappings as a conduit for new kinds of fear or new kinds of horror is a new phenomenon. Again, the entire kaiju genre in Japan was created based on the essentially shell shock that Japan had after getting nuked. And I would not deny them their post-nuke terror because, well, let's be honest, that terror was mostly justified. But nor would I deny someone who, either for humorous, irreverent reasons or through actually being afraid of COVID reasons, uses COVID as a Halloween costume. Because again, on some level, Halloween is for safely and in a controlled environment, allowing you to see the face of death and not back down from it. And considering that everyone on this planet either survived COVID or was able to avoid being involved with COVID in the first place, I think it's perfectly justified that we mock and deride and or make ourselves okay with COVID posthumously. That makes perfect sense. Moving on.
All right, number 5, body shaming and objectifying costumes.
Sexuality is a power, you unctuous bint. And people use it of their own volition most of the time.
When it comes to disrespecting women, this costume gets it wrong. Costume of a guy being held up by a lady thing. I don't get it myself. It turns a woman's weight into a joke. Think about it this way. If you shouldn't say it to a friend's face, don't wear it as a Halloween costume. Outfits that make fun of people's size, objectify human beings, or otherwise make light of a person's lived experience are all inappropriate. Oh my god. God damn, you're the most sensitive dumbass ever.
First of all, I think what that costume is doing is making the opposite of light of the of the person's weight. But I'm ching. Sorry, I had to make that joke. Second of all, fat costumes are permissible for exactly the same reason as fat jokes are permissible, because everyone is occasionally comedically caricatured. Think of a group. Think of any group under the freaking sun, and you will find some kind of joke or stereotype about them. Irish people being drunks, Scottish people being angry or standoffish, um, Asian people being, obsessive with kung fu or not being able to speak English properly or being good at math, or like Mexican people being lazy and overspicing their food, and yet like everyone has a caricature somewhere. Englishmen being stuffy and prudish and overly polite and shit. Like everyone has a stereotype somewhere. And yes, everyone does include fat people. Granted, just like every other demographic, for every negative stereotype, such as fat people being lazy slobs, etc., there's a positive stereotype. For example, the idea of the fat guy being jolly and so on. And the idea that you can't use a caricature as a means to create a costume is once again entirely fucking missing the point of this entire holiday. And you can get fucked. Moving on.
Number six, cultural stereotypes. Let me read some of it so you have something more.
Hmm.
When someone mimics a culture that isn't their own, particularly in an exaggerated or humorous way, it comes off as cultural appropriation or an offensive jab at other cultures.
Again, on some level, offense is perfectly welcome in Halloween because it's about being iconoclastic and irreverent on some level. Secondly, everyone has some kind of cultural stereotype. I mean, hell, the most recent cultural stereotype of white people is the pumpkin spice loving basic bitch who loves Starbucks more than life. Every everyone knows what I mean when I say a basic white bitch. And yet somehow if someone went as a basic white bitch or a Karen for Halloween, I sort of feel like you would have no problem. And yet when it's a different culture, perhaps a culture that the wearer finds interesting or at least finds meaningful enough to make um, jokes about, it's haram. Never never mind that very often people within that demographic occasionally will laugh at their own freaking stereotypes or embrace their own freaking stereotypes. I've met many Asian people. I've never known a single one of them to turn down the martial arts badass stereotype because that's actually a fun and funny stereotype. And that's the thing. Most caricatures are meant to be funny, not just for the person making the joke, but also for the person being homaged with it. Moving on.
If you or your child intend to pay homage to a beloved Disney character, hint Moana or Pocahontas, take care to dress with sensitivity. Focus on costuming linked to a specific
Bless you.
thank you, specific character, not general looks that have particular meaning or often marginalized groups of people. For example, skip the sombrero and poncho combo. Native American headdresses, kimonos, and grass skirts with a coconut top. Okay, one thing.
Okay. Go ahead.
Sombrero and poncho combo. Hispanic dude right here. I'm fine with that. Honestly, here's the weirdest thing. I've never seen those in a costume shop or in the costume aisle at a store. I've never seen them. Either they're sold out or they're just not there.
Yeah, I've
So you
I've
should curious.
I've not
Where are they?
I've only ever seen them occasionally on like online or something, like on Amazon or something. I've never seen it in like a party city or anything. Granted, the last time I went into a party city was when I was uh, in like 2013 when it was my first semester of college, and I wanted to go to Phantom of the Opera, which I still have pictures of. I'm very, very proud of that costume because I put a lot of work into it.
I'm sorry.
That was the last time I actually dressed up for Halloween, and I basically went full on cosplay with it. It was so much fun.
But what were you gonna say?
But yeah, the thing I was actually going to say was, one, what if it's a person of that ethnicity making fun of their own cultural stereotypes? Like, what if a Native American person wants to dress like a stereotypical Indian chief or a shaman? What if Brainstormer decided he was going to make fun of the whole sombrero thing and basically go with Speedy Gonzales? Um, I
Oh
mean,
no,
I
I
mean,
go
hell,
for it.
I mean that or in your case, I guess Diego, but that's my point being that one, people of these ethnicities, honestly, on some level, a lot of them like and treasure their cultural stereotypes because here's the thing on stereotypes. On some level, they're true because the stereotype obviously came from somewhere. Um, And on some level, the truth that underlies the stereotype can actually be, in some cases, a rallying point. Like I mentioned a while ago, the stereotype of Scottish people being ornery, angry, and standoffish. I've never known a Scottish person who didn't take some pride in that, because as a Scottish person will probably tell you, they take pride in being the rough and tough people who gave the British Empire what for every time they tried to conquer them, and so on. And in fact, um, I've seen Scottish people get really annoyed lately because their main political party, the SNP, are a bunch of globalist cucks, and they want to return to that like culture of irreverence. And by the way, I'm focusing on the Scottish thing because my ancestry actually is in Scotland. I'm descended from I'm descended from Norman Scots. So if you want to take up my if anyone wants to take me up on stereotyping the Scottish, then you can take it up with my kilted ass.
You can
But that
I'm part Irish. I have
yeah,
ancestry of Irish, so
and
which
I guess the Irish stereotype would be what the constant drunkenness and leprechauns.
yeah.
I
The drinking thing that actually makes a lot of sense for me because I drink a lot of pop. Well, I'm starting to stop.
well, I mean, the drinking in question is usually specifically whiskey obviously, but also specifically Guinness. I have known
Right.
many an Irish person, but and I always ask them like, do you are you offended by the idea of the Irish person always drinking Guinness? And the response is usually something along the lines of, "Fuck off! Are you ever gonna take my Guinness away from me?" Which, respect. Um, yeah, but point being, on some level, people choose to embrace their own stereotypes, and on some level, that their stereotypes almost give them a sense of cultural identity. Like the American stereotype of being a bunch of rebellious punters and wild and uncouth Wild West loving motherfuckers. I still to this day, even though I'm also an Anglophile, will make redcoat jokes because there's that ever beating American pride in me that does pride itself on being the people who kicked the British Empire's ass. Um, or more accurately, in my case, the British subjects who realized that the system was going bullshit and decided to get out while the getting was good. And if anyone tries to convince me that that stereotype people have of Americans is false, or we should just abandon our rebellious attitude, those people can take it up with my ass.
Enough.
Yeah.
Number 7, a terrorist.
Once again, people will make, or I guess I should say some people, because most people I think still default to the supernatural terrors like witches and vampires and so on. But more to the point, some people will always take topical um visages of some kind of humanitarian evil and use it as a Halloween costume, especially if it's in recent
Um,
enough memory to have actually affected some people.
I
I.e.,
can
there are
also,
people. Go ahead.
well, I was gonna say, which I feel like you would bring up, but dressing up as those kind of things in kind of a humorous or ironic way helps take the power that they have away
Yeah,
from them.
yeah. Mockery and irreverence diminishes the scare factor on some level. Um, again, this is part of what Halloween is for. Not only are you supposed to remember the gravity of the supernatural or death, but um, you're also supposed to be able to be comfortable enough with it, and on some level, even be irreverent about it. It's a way of saying, yes, it's rational to fear the Reaper. Yes, it's rational to fear death, but just this once, we're going to spit in the Reaper's eye because the Reaper has no authority over me. It's that kind of reasoning, and it's good and healthy. And once again, one of the ways people choose to get over trauma is by that irreverent middle finger to the face of whatever it is that scares them. You mock the terrorist who, you lost a family member in 9/11. You mock COVID-19 because you lost a loved one to it, etc., and so on. It's a way of saying, "I'm still here, bitch. Try again," or "Thank you, sir. May I have another?" is another famous irreverent line that people use. Like, "Neener, neener, you don't have power over me." It is on some level one of the many reasons why dressing up for Halloween as things that actually frighten you on some level works. Both because you should have some respect for death, both because you shouldn't be psychotically afraid of death, or you should be able to be comfortable with it, but also because every great now and again, a good bit of irreverence is also a good thing. Being able to look death square in the face and laugh is an entirely healthy and entirely humane thing that we do as a species. And of course, obviously, you have to strike a balance between being reverent, being whimsical, and being irreverent, but that's what Halloween is for. It's finding that balance between the dark, the light, the whimsical, the irreverent, and the reverent. Moving on. Oh, Brainstormer just messaged me and said he'd be right back. So I don't know how much longer that is, but and Ahsoka said hasn't said anything. Recently, the last thing she said was getting Brainstormer's attention because he wasn't reading her things. Mm. And yes,
I'm back.
Ahsoka. Yeah, but I just saw Ahsoka's thing about the demographics of Holocaust victims, and yes, that's true, Ahsoka. Um, it wasn't just Jews who got by the Holocaust. It was basically anyone that the Nazis considered to be Untermenschen. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah. Dressing up is still part of the terrorist outfit to be a new back. Dressing up as Osama bin Laden, Dylan Roof, or even a generic member of ISIS are all in extremely poor taste. This falls under the same heading as making light of tragedy. While we're at it, let's cross off the list people like Hitler, Putin, or anything that involves terrorist plans.
Again,
sorry.
Go ahead. You go.
I was gonna read it. Kind of making fun of something lessens its power, and like a terrorist, you make fun of that motherfucker. No one's gonna take. Well, you make fun of those kind of things, like people who are supposed to be very terrifying and humanitarian, right?
Mm-hmm.
You make fun of it. It holds no power. Like the real power of those kinds of people is the fear they induce. If people do not fear them, then they have no true power.
Yeah,
That's really what.
it's robbing them of the power that they choose. That's the whole point of terrorism. The whole point of terrorism is to use fear as a weapon. So when you take that weapon away from them, or occasionally even you turn that weapon on them by making fun of them directly, it lessens their ability. But moreover, even taking that out of consideration, again, on some level, Halloween is about confronting your fears. It's about looking some version or other of death in the eye and being able to either be comfortable with it, to mock it, or to hold it to some level of respect. And one or more of these things can be done with modern or semi-modern human evils. With the and moreover, um, if you take a Nazi or a fascist or a terrorist and you turn them into something to be caricatured, it also normalizes the fact that these types of thinking are uncommon. And I think that's one of the reasons why you, my dear writer of this article, and so many of your ilk have such an issue with it, because you, for some reason, think that these things are infinitely more common and likely than they are, and not the horrifying historical outliers that they are. Because they are uncommon, irrelevant, um, the worst that humanity has to offer. And as such, insofar as they are a face of death, they deserve to be confronted because that's what Halloween is for. Insofar as they weaponize fear, that fear should be taken away from them unmocked because that will rob them of their ability. And insofar as they are something that actually genuinely scares people, they deserve to be in the canon of Halloween somewhere. So, no matter which way you slice this, you are missing the fucking point of Halloween entirely. The more real the fear is to you, the more you probably should be wearing it on Halloween. Moving on.
Oh, one hello, Corona. Says green because it feels blue. I have no idea what that means.
Hello, Chrono.
Do you get that? They're saying green because if you were blue, and
No, I have no idea.
number 8, zombie versions of deceased celebrities. So,
Again, the necromantic corpse, be it the actual product of necromancy, or be it the virus version, or be it the nuclear version popularized by Romero, or some combination of all three, is as old as the hills underneath the hills underneath the hills, and is quintessentially um, what Halloween is about confronting slash embracing slash mocking. Um, and yes, it can do all three because that's one of the magical nuances of Halloween. But that's not here nor there. And as far as using celebrities, very often people will do celebrities or zombie celebrities because they really like and want to homage that character or that celebrity. And especially when it's someone like Michael Jackson, who literally has a song, a Halloween themed song that is specifically about The Walking Dead, i.e. Thriller. It's a bit crazy to say that you're not allowed to. For example, and another example, Vincent Price made most of his living acting in horror movies. So if I wanted to do zombie Vincent Price, I would be perfectly justified in doing so. And again, this falls under what seems to be a running theme for you of it's too soon. But the thing is, some aspects of Halloween are always going to be topical. there will also be the other end of it where there will be timeless things that will always be a fixture of Halloween, which is jack-o'-lanterns, etc. But there will also always be a vector of Halloween that is topical and irreverent towards topical things, because that's the whole freaking point on some level.
Because Chrono said the song because I make more sense than their argument. Okay. What
I've
song?
never heard that song from.
I mean, as soon as you mentioned, I feel like we're gonna just slap ourselves in the head. We should have known.
Is possible, but moving on with the list.
Yeah. We get it. You want to pay homage, wanted to be a part of things. Go Wild was the best Ziggy Stardust, your Purple Rain fit, or even Amy Winehouse effect. Okay? But don't add zombie makeup. It's always going to be too soon to wear anything reminiscent of someone's corpse. Okay, so where the fuck is the line drawn? It's fucking dumb because
Zombies are one of the most quintessential Halloween mainstays in human history.
so it's one of these. I've just not realized it's one of these articles where it makes no fucking sense. It's the same shit, the same shit.
It's literally this person wants the superficial trappings of Halloween, but none of the actual substance or ethos behind Halloween. Like you can dress up, but don't you dare be scary or controversial on Halloween. Fucking heck.
Okay. Number 9. Moving on. Moving on.
Yes, moving on.
Okay. Number 9, an eating disorder. A few years ago, an online store took some heat for releasing a costume called anorexia. The incredibly poor taste outfit included a skeleton dress with a measuring tape, though, to cinch the weight. Not only is it truly terrible fun, it also trivializes eating disorders. Oh my god. It's
Again,
a fucking joke.
but or it's a image of something someone actually finds horrifying. Because here's the thing. Again, with this it's in poor taste argument. What you mean when you say it's in poor taste on some level is either it evokes your disgust response or it evokes your moral sensibilities. And here's the problem with your theory. Things that rub up against moral tastes or disgust or senses of disgust or moral sensibilities are exactly what Halloween is fucking for. It's supposed to be a rebel's holiday, in the same way that Christmas is supposed to be about hearth and home and family and wholesomeness and shite. Halloween is the counterbalance. Halloween is about iconoclastism. It's about irreverence. It's about being the rebel. It's about being comfortable with things that normally make people uncomfortable or disturbed. That's what it's fucking for. So yes, your argument is it's in poor taste, to which I say that means it's a perfect vector for a costume. And if your argument is we can't use anorexia because it's disturbing, it being disturbing is exactly the fucking point. Brainstormer, I can't see or hear you, so I don't know if you're back yet. But it looks like you're back.
Sorry, yeah, my internet crapped down real quick. So, yeah. Hello?
Can either of you guys hear Brainstormer? Because I can't hear him or see him for that matter. It just looks like one of those empty white StreamYard bubbles. I'll try to jump out and jump back in and see if that helps.
Can you guys hear me?
Okay, testing.
Hey.
Okay, we're back. Good.
Yeah, that was on my end originally. My internet crapped out, so I had to.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah,
back
I
to
got kicked out actually. Stinger kicked me out, and so I had to fix my internet real quick.
Yeah, back to explaining to this woman that offending or running contrary to her moral sensibilities or her disgust sensibilities is exactly the fucking point of Halloween.
Yeah, give me one sec. Moving on then.
Yes. I ranted while you were fixing things.
Moving on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Number 10. Animal cruelty. Remember that dentist who slaughtered piece of a lion and the terrible costume that resulted? Yeah, don't do that. Also off the table, costumes that involve animal shelters and euthanasia, hunting get-ups, and graphic accessories are any that you wouldn't want your children to come across while out there collecting candy. The fuck does that even mean?
Again, if it's disturbing, if it runs up against your moral pearl clutching, then that makes it good fodder for Halloween by definition. Because Halloween is about loosening your moral inhibitions and being iconoclastic or irreverent, at least for a little while. Again, it's the counterbalance to Christmas. Christmas is all about wholesomeness and hearth and home and not and family values and whatnot. But Halloween is very much the counter to it. It's the darkness, it's the shadow, it's the death and the depravity and the twistedness, and learning that those things are okay sometimes, and that you have to loosen up your moral inhibitions, because moral inhibitions are a structure that can enslave you if you don't occasionally let yourself breathe without them on occasion. Moving on.
Number 11, a mentally ill person. Actually, the most basic, a mentally ill person. Straight Jennifer and shit like
that. Again, if it's disturbing, if it's unnatural seeming, if it rubs up against your moral and or disgust sensibilities, that's what it's for. That's what Halloween is. It's allowing yourself to occasionally step out of your moral framework and realize that there's a whole world out there in the darkness that you would normally be afraid of, and you probably shouldn't be on some level. Or at the very least, forcing you to confront those things so that you can then become more accustomed to them. Moving on.
Sometimes offensive stereotypes creep into our speech before we even realize it. How often have many of us called a difficult person crazy without thinking about how this term might sound to someone living with mental illness? Oh my god.
I've spoken to many people who have various different kinds of mental illness, my sweet, and you know what? A lot of them have a distinction between someone who's mentally ill and a crazy bitch. And I think I speak for everyone when I say that you may not have a mental illness, my dear, but you are most definitely a crazy bitch. Because here's the difference between mentally ill and crazy. Mental illness is something people can help. It's a quirk of their neurology. Craziness or stupidity or stupidity um, is something that people who have otherwise entirely cogent faculties believe counterintuitive or nonsensical shit because they actually are rationally convinced of it. So, in other words, mentally ill people know they are mentally ill. You, my dear crazy bitch, are perfectly sane, and yet you believe this crazy shit.
Following costumes that make light of mental institutions fall under the same category. Wearing a straitjacket or any other equipment or attire typically associated with instu- with the institutionalization of people with mental illness trivializes what can be a painful experience.
Again, mentally ill people, just like every other category of people, have caricatures. And here's the other thing. There are many, many vectors of mental illness that don't have anything to do with psychosis or violence or being institutionalized in that way. It's only the most it's only the most severe of mental illnesses where people would either harm themselves or others that get treated with the straitjacket anymore. As well it should be, because, those people are, you know, actually a danger to themselves or others, and thus they probably should be prevented from being so. But most people who have some version or other of mental illness, be it anxiety, be it depression, be it a personality disorder like that, they're perfectly capable of, despite having their mental issues, functioning in society. It's only the very extremist edge of mental illness that we treat that way anymore. It used to be that we shoved literally anyone who stepped out of line at all in terms of norms into the mental asylum. Those were inhumane times, but even their inhumanity is something that makes them good fodder for Halloween, either for reverent reasons or mockery reasons. But nowadays, we only treat the most indefensibly crazy people like that, as well we should, because they're actually going to harm themselves or others if we don't. Or um they're simply going to live a horrifying life because they literally can't control themselves or have lucidity in any way. Yeah, moving on. hmm
Number 12, sexual harassment.
How
The
the
hashtag
fuck?
#MeToo movement should be
Go ahead.
the
Yeah, go ahead.
hashtag #MeToo the hashtag #MeToo movement should be an ample reminder that sexual harassment jokes really aren't funny, but it bears repeating. Someone exposing themselves to non-consenting viewers isn't just an unfortunate accident. It's a very real and traumatic form of sexual harassment. These kinds of costumes, like Frank the Flasher, are not only in poor taste, they may trigger those who have dealt with harassment themselves. Don't miss it. Oh my god.
Oh, fucking hell. Okay. Once again, Halloween is on some level about countering your moral sensibilities, forcing you to confront where they're false or facile, and about dealing with things that make you uncomfortable, and or things that you actually have legitimate fears of. Hence, anything that is topically recent about the evils of humanity is perfectly sane fodder for Halloween. And given how much hysterical fear you have of how much hysterical fear led to the hashtag MeToo movement, it's perfectly fine fodder for either satirical Halloween costumes that make fun of it because it is something worthy of making fun of, or actual reverent Halloween costumes. Either way, you're not only are you being dumb in relation to your thoughts on Halloween, as we've already gone over, but are you going to ban the entire Lifetime movie network? Because the entire premise of the Lifetime movie network, for the most part, is literally creating over-the-top hysterical dramatizations of this kind of harassment. And yet most of the viewership of those Lifetime movies, quite obsessively I might add, are middle class moms who want a thrill that rustles their jimmies on occasion, which again is one of the elements of Halloween. It's supposed to rustle your jimmies at least a little bit, because there's thrill in confronting and then surviving something you're afraid of. Hence why jump scares in movies happen so often. Granted, that's probably the cheapest variety of movie, and hence why I find Lifetime movies to be a little bit massively overblown, but at least for some people, several of whom might be in the aforementioned category of basic bitches, that's the kind of fear that gets their rocks off. Moving on.
Number 15, an unhoused person, or a more common term, homeless.
So, no hobos, or gypsies, or vagabonds, or wanderers, or anything of that ilk.
Okay.
Even though even though it's very often a loving caricature, even though it's usually to draw attention to the fact that these people get mistreated, even though it actually is something that homeless people themselves find flattering in many occasions, it's just morally non-permissible. Never mind that being morally non-permissible is exactly the fucking point of Halloween on some level.
I was going to, well, never mind. I don't think so. For decades, dressing up as a hobo was considered a harmless outfit. But in the U.S. alone, thousands of people are without safe and accessible shelter every day, and the crisis continues to worsen. It's a lived reality for many, not a cute outfit idea.
Again, is it possible that some of these costumes might actually be in order to draw attention to this phenomena? Because here's the really sad part. Very often people just don't care about the homeless. People don't think about the homeless on a day-to-day level. So in that scenario where people go out of their way to avoid thinking about the homeless, is it or is it not permissible to remind people that they exist by drawing attention to them? Not to mention that every demographic of people, as previously mentioned, have stereotypes about them. And this goes both for the hobo and the gypsy, which the gypsy is a whole nother kettle of fish of why some people who simultaneously will shun their Romani heritage and yet bitch at everyone else for maintaining the allure or the mystique of the gypsy somehow. But that basically any category of like wandering vagabond or homeless person or societal unmentionable is perfectly fair game for Halloween, especially because several of these varieties of people are associated with the darker or more macabre or more like whimsically over the top absurd parts of the world. Like for example, the circus freak or the person in a freak show type thing, or the gypsy, or the list goes on. But moving on.
Number 14, a national tragedy. None of those two people who dressed up as Twin Towers after 9/11 claimed. The same principle also applies to the Boston Marathon bombing, any and all mass shootings, the storming of the Capitol building, and the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. One more time for the people in the back. Making light of tragedy isn't funny. Motherfucker! Oh, you're an
Yeah,
idiot. God, damn, how people so
yes, it fucking is. One and two. That's exactly what Halloween is for. Moving on.
Moving on.
Yeah.
And 15, the Black Lives Matter movement or any other social justice movement.
Oh, I see. Because you don't like when
Right?
people make fun of moralistic prudes. Why am I fucking not surprised?
The racial justice reckoning in a country is powerful, but that doesn't mean you should turn it into a Halloween costume, even in tribute to those doing the work. Wearing a slogan t-shirt to protest, visual or just around town is one thing, but don't try and turn the fight for racial equality into an outfit for your Halloween gathering. That's tokenism, not solidarity. Motherfucker,
Okay.
that's all these fucking things are.
Okay, sweetheart.
Hold on. There's one more sentence. Sorry.
Mhm.
The same goes for any other political or social justice movement. Maybe slogans for the protest on.
No, dear. No. You can in fact mock and dress as any social justice movement you like for exactly the same reason as one of the most one of the most common vectors of mockery in the old days in the 90s and 2000s was the Stepford wife or the Helen Lovejoy stereotype, the moralistically prudish traditionalist who constantly whined and bitched and moaned about my family values. Whether you like it or not, these alleged social justice movements are the modern day equivalents of the TradCon family values Bible thumpers of yesteryear. And especially at a time where irreverence and embracing or making fun of or becoming friendly with the dark and the deadly is the point of the holiday. Mocking those who, for whatever reason, will not get on board with the ethos of the festival and will maintain their moralistic prudishness is very much fair fucking game. In the same way as you would mock Helen Lovejoy or Martha Tisdale in the Good Witch franchise, um or Dolores Umbridge in the Harry Potter franchise, or um I'm trying to think of other examples. Or a Stepford wife, or um, or a Karen. That's the modern equivalent. Um, Anyone who is moralistic enough that they literally will not make space in their life or in their minds for freedom from morality, freedom from restriction, freedom from prudishness, and embracing things like darkness, death, and irreverence, especially around Halloween. Mocking them is perfectly permissible. It's just like in the old days when people would dress as nuns but wear devil horns on the outside of their nun habit. Because again, what's being turned on its head around Halloween is morality. Is that stuffed shirt constantly in the light, constantly um being scolding and paternal or maternalistic around everyone mentality. And you just went ahead and proved that you are exactly for social justice what the Helen Lovejoys and Martha Tisdales and and I'm trying to think of another example. Um and the Dolores Umbridges are for the TradCon sensibilities. Moving on.
Okay. Next one is some don't also send. That's kind of in the same vein, to be honest.
Mhm.
This is from uk.news.yahoo.com. Halloween 2023 problematic costumes to steer clear of this year, including serial killers and death celebrities. Written by Sophie Wills, and published September 12th, 2023.
You do realize that everything you tell us to steer clear of, people are just going to embrace even harder to fuck with you. I hope that is also something that the person who wrote the previous article is aware of. The list of things you morally shouldn't do are exactly the things people are going to embrace in order to be irreverent and have fun and be naughty and controversial.
Enough.
Yep, moving on.
It might be difficult to believe after the recent delays with the Halloween is almost upon us again. For many, the certain holiday is the highlight of the year. Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
A time for
Obviously.
trick-or-treating, carving pumpkins, and curling up with your favorite horror. However, there is another tradition that ultimately rears its head every October 31st that's more problematic than the rest. Offensive Halloween costumes. While dressing up is to be expected and have fun for most, there are some costumes that should be avoided at all costs.
Again, being irreverent, standoffish, iconoclastic, and offensive is at least part of the point of the holiday. So the more you moralistically pearl clutch over what we shouldn't do, the more likely it is people are going, even if people take this article seriously, which most people won't, even if people take this article seriously, they're just going to take it as a top however many list of costumes they should be wearing, frankly, if for no other reason than to rub your moral sensibilities the wrong way. As well they should. It's Halloween.
No.
Yep, moving on.
As a general reminder, costumes that make light of serious events can demean the long-term effects many people still endure because of them, such as the COVID-19 pandemic, mass shootings, terrorist attacks, that infamous pair who dressed up as the Twin Towers on 9/11, and natural disasters are beyond insight. The same goes for costumes that poke fun at movements such as Black Lives Matter or hashtag
Again, anything topical and tragic and scary is fair game for Halloween, and anything moralistic, prudish, and censorious is fair game for mockery, especially around a festival that's all about embracing the dark, embracing the scary, embracing the controversial, and countering overbearing moralism. Moving on.
And here's a guy dressed up as Jeffrey Dahmer. Okay. And blackface, which deeply rooted in racism, is never okay under any circumstances. Dressing up as someone from a specific culture, especially one that is marginalized, is a form of cultural appropriation and should also be considered racist. Here's a list of other Halloween costumes to feel for and if
Cultures are not supposed to be isolated in a bubble or a historical rabbit cage. They are supposed to be part of the melting pot. I know you're from the UK, but speaking as a proud American, I can tell you that is one of our deepest held virtues. We are the great American melting pot. And the best way to break down barriers between cultures and to counter animosity is to let people engage with each other on in lighthearted or irreverent terms. Not to mention that are you therefore saying that whiteface is okay but blackface isn't? Because that would be a racial double standard that you're producing then, which is in and of itself racist. Moving forward.
Also, no worries. Dragon Charlie says sorry to delay. I'm doing fine. I hope you're doing well. So.
Yeah, I'm just happy we're in the October country again. He's good. He's very good.
Yeah. Serial killers including Jeffrey Dahmer was warned not to dress up as Jeffrey Dahmer for Halloween last year after a Netflix series portraying the crimes of the infamous serial killer achieved global success. Dahmer, Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story centers around the life of Dahmer, who murdered and dismembered 17 men and boys in a horrific killing spree between 1978 and 1991. Huh.
Yes, and again, things that are frightening, things that are outside of the polite norms of society, things that make you have to confront your mortality on some level, are exactly the fucking point. And yes, while I personally would prefer if people focused more on the supernatural mainstays of Halloween, there's always going to be a certain vector of people who focus primarily on human tragedy and or human evil as their particular vector of embodying death, embodying the Reaper. And serial killers are basically as close as a human being can get to embodying death. So yes, they are perfectly fair game for Halloween. Granted, I think topical costumes are a bit basic bitch, but to each their own. To some people, a human evil is more scary than a supernatural one.
Alright, wasn't long before Jeffrey Dahmer inspired costumes and prompts began surfacing online as Halloween 2022 occurred. Prompting calls from Dahmer's victims' families to refrain from dressing up as a prolific killer who was a real person and ruined countless lives. While it's not uncommon for fans to dress up as fictional killers, such as Jason X or Hannibal Lecter on Halloween, imitating a real serial killer is disrespectful to the victims, and the devastated ones they leave behind.
Did it
Um,
ever occur to you? Go ahead.
I mean, I can say I get that, but again, basically making fun of something is taking away the power of something. Like, again, I'm
Well,
not going
not
to
not to mention, once again, Halloween is on some level about controlled, humorous immorality. It's it's about flouting the moral standards. So I'm sorry if the victims of Jeffrey Dahmer or the surviving people who were his the family members of the people who were his victims are offended. But frankly, if a Halloween costume is scary, irreverent, and causes a fear response, it's doing what it's supposed to fucking do. Not to mention that there are, I'm certain, victims of these serial killers who prefer seeing these people reduced to caricatures or cultural touchstones rather than the people that they were. And if you say a single bad word about Dr. Lecter again, I'm getting my Hannibal cookbook, because fuck you. Nobody speaks ill of Dr. Hannibal Lecter while I'm within earshot. Thank you very much. Completely different point to the one I know you were trying to make, but if you come for Dr. Lecter, you will have to go over my fucking dead body.
you did.
Yes.
And on the COVID-19 pandemic. God damn, get the fuck over it.
The fact that you are so moralistically harumphing and so afraid of COVID is exactly what makes it the perfect Halloween costume. Again, topical Halloween costumes are a bit basic in my opinion. I prefer the old school mainstays, but on some level, people will always take real world evil and human evil more seriously than they will take supernatural evil. And that's fine. I'm not going to police their choice of expression on a day which is all about irreverent or contrary to moral expression. Halloween is about darkness. It's about
Okay, so
embracing
this is
the.
basically a shorter list.
How many entries are on this list?
Hold on. About maybe 5, 6, and they're all fairly similar to the ones we just covered.
Yeah, I kind of figured. Anyway, back to the list. But yeah, no. Topical evil is always going to be good for some people, and rubbing people's moral sensibilities the wrong way is sort of what Halloween is for under controlled circumstances.
It's easy to put on a mask, purchase the fake syringe, and show up as the COVID-19 pandemic for Halloween. But doing so would make light of the virus which killed millions and continues to seriously affect people around the world. Same goes for the monkeypox virus, of which there have been tens of thousands of confirmed cases globally so far.
Okay,
Hold on. Any costume that resembles anti-vaxxers or someone with COVID-19 should also be avoided.
I'm sorry, but this actually pissed this person being morally prudish on my alleged behalf pisses me off, because the monkeypox virus is more common among LGBT or gay people. That's fair, but here's the thing: it's only common among people who engage in literal goddamn orgies in the most over the top hedonistic fashion you could conceivably imagine. And I'll speak as a gay person, but just for the record, not all gay people even want to engage with orgies. Not saying I'm judging the people who do want to engage in orgies. I mean a little bit, but the people who want to engage in orgies are perfectly free to want to engage in orgies. But you don't get to drag down the reputation of the entire gay community because you want to embrace the gay people being hedonistic and doing orgies stereotype. And frankly, um, I view monkeypox as the ultimate play stupid games, win stupid prizes, or fuck around and find out syndrome, because for most gay people, we don't engage in orgies. So those that do engage in orgies, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. I'm sorry. Moving on.
Jesus Christ. I don't want to read that Dragon Trail. It's funny, but I don't want to read it.
I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, my categorization is slightly more nuanced than just a 1 to 30 scale, but I take your point. Or 1 to 20 scale. Brainstorm has gone bye-bye. He gone.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's like I literally just took a glance at the damn chat, and I see that just like right there, and it. Oh my god. Oh.
I think you win the chat for tonight, Dragon Turtle. I think you just made Brainstormer's night, and it always makes me happy when he's happy. So. Oh no, he's not broken yet, because he hasn't been judged on the 1 to 20 scale. Didn't we just go over this? Trust me, Dragon Turtle. You will know when I have successfully broken Brainstormer.
Oh god. All right. Okay.
I don't think I've ever seen you laugh so hard at anything in like the 4 or 5 years that we've known each other. Good for you, Dragon Turtle. You win the chat tonight.
Like, it's the specific scenario that happened. Like, I was just not expecting to read that. Like, it's just like so out of like left field for me. That's what got me.
Yep. Dragon Turtle successfully won the chat tonight.
Okay. Moving on.
Yes.
Transphobic costumes. Be sure to call out a transphobic costume if you see one. It will only lead to greater transphobia and marginalization of an already at-risk community. Several retailers in America came under fire a couple years ago for offering degenerate Halloween costumes, which include a white corset and wig. Critics argued the costumes mocked the transgender community and promoted transphobia for reducing gender to a stereotype.
Again, if it stands against the moral grain, that makes it on some level a good Halloween costume. But secondly, and I mentioned this to the last article we did that covered this, are you actually going to now disavow the entire drag community? Because if you are saying that it is morally wrong to dress in quote-unquote trans costumes, period, then that disavows the entire drag community, and good luck dealing with the social justice backlash from that, because a lot of people in the social justice side of things frankly have an undue affection for drag.
Does that mean no one can dress up as Dr. Frankenfurter from Rocky Horror Picture Show?
That would seem to be the implication, yes.
I mean, I wouldn't dress up in that just because I don't think I could pull it off, mind you.
Yeah, I wouldn't look good in a corset. Otherwise, I might give it a go. But plus, that would mean having to forego my bow ties, and that's just not happening.
I can see you dressing up as Zatara, honestly.
Probably not Zatara because of his association with Stage Illusion.
Mandrake the Magician.
I could do that. Another good one for me would probably be Simon Petrikov from Adventure Time. Because he, at least when he was still human, wore bow ties. Because bow ties are as ever cool. But more to the point. The second thing I was going to point out is either you are forcefully disavowing the entire drag community, or you are saying that drag is good in every context except Halloween. Which, given that Halloween is at least on some level a festival that involves costumes, that's a really frankly stupid position. If you allow drag in every context except Halloween, then you are a moralistic moron on a level that I don't even think I can address. I don't have the mental bandwidth to actually explain to you just how many ways you are wrong if you actually sincerely believe that drag is good in every context except the one that actually involves people dressing up under normal circumstances. And if you are actually disavowing the entire drag community, then even though I'm not the biggest fan of drag, I would still say fuck you, because I'm fine with consenting adults engaging in drag if they feel like it. You throw children in there and all of a sudden you're but yeah, no, just as long as it's consenting adults and people who realize what they're doing, drag is a thing people should be free to do. So there.
I think it's 2 more things. Yeah, doesn't really have an end to it. It just ends on the last thing.
Dragon Turtle, do I have to take the gold star away from you? Are you going to go full chat tyrant already? Because I will take the gold star away from you. You should know better than anyone who unironically mentions censorship in my chat is themselves going the right way to get fucking banned.
Alright,
We do not censor things here, period.
bots, maybe.
If you can be reasonably demonstrated to be an actual being, then yeah, we don't censor the chat here. Bots, on the other hand, bots on the other hand will go to the Google gulag.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
zombie versions of dead celebrities. Paying homage to one of your favorite celebrities who are sadly no longer with us is fine. Go wild with an Amy Winehouse beehive if you wish, but adding zombie makeup on top, or turning your costume into a meme caricature would be in very bad taste. You should never dress
Everything.
up in a way that makes fun of a celebrity. Hold on.
Mm-hmm.
Make fun of a celebrity's death, particularly if it was sad. Remember that someone else's personal tragedy is not your entertainment on Halloween.
Everything that is a Halloween costume is in some level a caricature. Now it can be a very good caricature if someone puts the effort in to basically go full cosplay with their costume. Or it can be a very funny caricature if someone goes full satire with their costume. Or it can be very Halloween themed if someone goes very spooky with their costume. But on some level, everything on Halloween is some kind of caricature. Moreover, the phrase bad taste basically has no power on Halloween because the very core of Halloween is to stand against the grain of morality, is to be iconoclastic and irreverent and embrace the dark, the twisted, the macabre, the chthonic, the sublunar, and the quithothic. Basically, that's what Halloween is for and what it is and has been for thousands of years at this point. So you can take your moralistic taste and or your disgust response and shove them up your ass. And the zombie has been a mainstay of Halloween, or the undead corpse has been a mainstay of Halloween in some form for probably thousands of years, if not longer. So yeah, no, you can take your moralistic sensibilities and or your overgrown disgust response and shove them up your ass. Moving on.
Homeless person dressing up as a hobo was considered a harmless outfit for decades. But in the UK, thousands of people are without safe and accessible shelter, and this wish continues to worsen as the cost of living crisis spirals. Homelessness is a lived reality for many and not a cute home in California.
Again, the fact that it's real and tragic and scary makes it very much good fodder for Halloween. Secondly, I didn't make this point earlier, but I'm going to make it now. One of the festivals associated with both Halloween and Christmas is the Roman festival of Saturnalia. During the Roman festival of Saturnalia, everything in the social hierarchy was deliberately inverted, which did often feature lords of the manor um, pampering or treating their slaves as the masters momentarily, or bringing beggars and homeless people into households for the purpose of allowing them to feast and essentially treating them with some kind of reverence. So not only is this wrong and bullheaded and moralistic of you to say, but on some level it actually runs contrary to the core of what Halloween is. It's about embracing the darkness, seeing the darkness as a positive thing for at least a little while, being purposefully rebellious, purposefully iconoclastic and irreverent, and turning things that are otherwise moralistic in nature on their head. Because learning how to see beyond those things and learning how to make a friend of the Reaper, or at least confront the Reaper, the famous memento mori, it is what Halloween very much is. So focusing on the homeless for the purposes of including them in the same festival that everyone else is included in, especially in a world where we don't focus nearly enough on the homelessness issue, is a good thing. And again, everyone has some kind of stereotype or caricature associated with them that can be exploited as a Halloween costume. And your moralistic sensibilities and or mud disgust response are not good reasons to neuter Halloween. Fuck off with them, please.
Okay, so now we're getting Giant Turtle. SCW stop using indigenous culture stuff and things and kids your right wing house. People are color traitors, they aren't doing it right because it isn't how we see. Normal people, okay, will just do things and give you a thing. SCW, clearly this shows you are white supremacy. That is how
Yeah.
it goes.
You focus on white Europeans because they're the ones you're allowed to satirize, and you're white supremacist. You inclusively embrace unconventional cultures, and that proves that you're racist somehow. Because no matter what you do, your actions will be morally judged. There's no such thing as morally neutral or things that don't or things that don't belong to our moral zeitgeist somehow, according to these people. It's
Right.
fucking terrifying.
So now we're moving on to my topic.
As usual, Brainstormer mostly did the positive ones.
I got very lucky in like some of the things. Huh? I think I talked over you. What did you say?
I said, as usual, Brainstormer mostly did positive ones.
One of them is positive. Okay. Now, the people from those cultures aren't allowed to because the SCW is defined in a natural way. It's changed by patriarchy or colonialism or something. What the true way is, or say, well, they are problematic here. So this trailer for Goosebumps series.
Because they're bringing it back.
Not the way you think, Tom.
Oh no.
Okay. I mean, I am all for Goosebumps like getting a revival of some kind. Because that made my childhood, both like the TV series and like the reruns of it. It's a great series that I think was limited due to the time it came out, which was in the 90s.
I honestly think though that some of the like lo-fi nature of it added to its charm.
No, I agree. I would just I would like to see a little bit.
Goosebumps with modern effects would definitely be interesting.
Yeah, not the movies, obviously. I'm clearly referencing like
the movies are okay, but they're not nearly as special as the TV show.
Like, legitimately, I do think R.L. Stein's The Haunting Hour was very much Goosebumps modern wise.
Well, yeah, the Goosebumps for like for like older kids or teens.
Yeah.
I still say one of the best episodes of TV period was the My Sister the Witch episode of that. Because someone clearly did their fucking research on that episode.
God, I can't remember what the episode is. Like, there are some episodes I remember the Haunting Hour really well. Like, two come to mind, which is the one with the kid that has like the fear of clowns, but it turns out clowns are a species and he's one of them.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yep.
And the other one is it revolves around this guy who's like a big fan of graphic artists. And steals like his pen or paintbrushes or something like that. And basically, he gets wrapped up into creating a horror story where he is the victim in that story.
And then of course it comes true because obviously.
Yeah.
The other one I really like is the Most Evil Sorcerer two-parter. It's one of the few like historically set episodes, and I like they did such a good job on portraying like learning magic. It is so cool.
Right.
It's one of the few times those two episodes are one of the few times I wish they would almost do a revisit instead of making them one-offs, because you could almost make an entire series out of those two stories.
Right. Anyway, I am going to mute myself. So there isn't that echo.
Yeah. I don't know what thing to use though. I'm leaning towards Monster Blood because Monster Blood was always my favorite.
I was going to say, oh, no, we always do Jack-o'-lanterns.
We do, in fact. So Jack-o'-lanterns it is.
Have we met?
Nathan Bratt. I'm the new English teacher.
You live near here?
Yeah. The old Biddle House.
The Biddle House.
I did hear the horrible story about the boy who used to live there.
Wait, so they're not doing an anthology series based on the books? They're trying to weave some kind of long-running plot together with all of them?
I think so. Like, yeah, there just seems to be like one congruent story about, which is what weirded me out, and I wanted to talk about this. That is the reason why I wanted to talk about this. Now, I can understand. Like, I would be fine. I would be totally fine if they adapted one of the books. Like my favorite one, like my two favorite ones, which I think there was a lot of potential for them, of like the original Griswold series, right? Like book-wise, in the Attack of the Mutants, which I've mentioned before, like a couple of years, like almost every year we did it. Attack of the Mutants got me into comics, got me into like superheroes and stuff, and a Shocker on Shock Street, which I love filmmaking and stuff like that. I think those could be explored more as like individual series on their own, sure. But it's weird that this is called Goosebumps, but it doesn't seem anthology-like.
Well, this is the thing. I don't even necessarily dislike the idea of a world where all the Goosebumps stories basically take place concordantly. Like that could make sense. One thing I'm having is there's always been a like Addams Family style sense of humor about the Goosebumps. They're like B horror stories. That they're like semi-irreverent, humorous versions of horror stories for kids. And I don't see much of the humor or the irreverence in the style here. They seem to be playing it way more serious and way more straight than I would prefer. Then again, I haven't seen this whole trailer, so maybe
it does. I will say that you kind of get R.L. Stine's The Haunting Hour a bit from it,
which is fine. But why isn't it a Haunting Hour series then, rather than a? Because again, the Haunting Hour books and the show were both darker than Goosebumps. They were meant for older kids, and they were meant to be more in the line of serious dark fantasy / serious supernatural horror on occasion. But like Goosebumps are meant to be somewhat humorous and irreverent and kind of tongue in cheek in a like Addams Family style way. So I don't know why the humor isn't there.
All right, let me mute real quick.
Yeah, Jack-o'-lanterns.
You know, I hear it's haunted. Have you seen anything strange happening there?
cheese!
That is not funny!
No. Not that I can think of.
Yeah, I don't. They're almost taking like a serious horror vibe with it, and I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know. It just, I don't mind books. I mean, I could be a little more colorful, but that's whatever. I'm used to things not having color in them these days. It's like how you said, it's supposed to have like this B movie horror vibe, with like Goosebumps stuff, right?
Yeah, it's again like an Addams Family style tongue-in-cheek humor to it. Or you know what's another thing that it's kind of similar to? Remember Are You Afraid of the Dark, the Nickelodeon series?
Yeah, and I'm also, what was that? It was like a Nickelodeon, not Are You Afraid of the Dark, but Bedtime Stories.
I remember the title, but I never actually watched that. The only like other horror thing apart from like Invader Zim or Real Monsters that I remember is House of Anubis. Or am I the only one that remembers House of Anubis?
Well, to be fair, this was like early 2010 that I watched
Hmm.
it. Yeah, it was like Nickelodeon did a month-long series called Bedtime Stories, and it was a horror anthology too, and it was actually really good.
Mm.
And it was 2010 had some really like interesting like kid horror stuff. I think
Mm.
yeah,
That's how I
it
feel.
feels this feels weird because it's like I'm almost getting like Blumhouse vibes from it.
Yeah, like I say, they're trying to do a serious horror with it, and they might be trying to do the like bait and switch of like it sets up a serious horror vibe and then it turns into the more like humorous and irreverent type stuff that Goosebumps is known for. But I could just as easily see them go straight horror with it, and I don't know why they would bother. Like there are other franchises you can use if you want to do a straight up horror. That's not what Goosebumps is. Goosebumps is kind of like halfway between like Twilight Zone and halfway between Addams Family and Twilight Zone is where you find Goosebumps.
All right.
But yeah, Jack o' lanterns.
Some weird stuff has been happening.
Something's clearly wrong.
Why would you do that, man? That's not cool! There's no such thing as a curse, dude. That isn't real. I get those goosebumps every time.
Okay, I hate this music. I hate this music so much. Cause like
Okay, so I don't mind the music. Granted, I don't think it should be for this.
it feels like someone is trying to parody the Goosebumps now, and I hate that.
Also, is it weird that it's on Disney Plus?
Wait, this is on Disney Plus.
Yeah. Also,
honestly, I would
October
if there was going to be a continuation of Goosebumps, I would prefer it be on HBO Max because like the Cartoon Network sensibilities would work better for it.
Yeah, modern Cartoon Network sensibilities. Okay, so this comes out on October 13th, which is the Friday after the upcoming Friday.
Hmm.
You're gonna love that day, I'm sure, Dalton. I'm a superstitious bastard, so I am
Yeah,
dreading.
avoidance of the bad luck. Although, I mean, to be fair, I'm immune to change because of a bargain I made with Mab, so I
Fuck you.
have less to worry about, but I'm still knocking on wood.
Also, I'm gonna be fully honest. I'm not. I said Blumhouse, but at least with Blumhouse, from certain Blumhouse movies, like the Conjuring stuff and all that, there's actually like a lot of creative camera things.
Yeah, and
Not
they
really,
do, the good ones at least have a flavor to them, like Happy Death Day and Happy Death Day 2 kind of thing.
yeah. These, th- this is all very basic looking.
It is, and
I mean,
again, it's missing the soul of what Goosebumps is or should be.
I will say I did like the reference to like the camera, say change and die.
I mean, sure, but I don't want just even if I was okay with references, I would
Reference,
want it to be more. I would want it to be more in line with what the tone is.
yeah, fair enough. I'm trying to look for something good and positive to talk about, man. Okay, I'm
I just
trying here. I'm trying to be objective.
I know, but it's like I really really liked Goosebumps as a kid, and this feels like one of those you're doing unmentionable things with my childhood icons here, and I hate you.
Have you ever read Rotten School? I don't know if
Have
you
I
like
ever read what?
Rotten School. It's another R.L. Stein book series, like mostly ghostly.
No, I've read some of The Haunting Hour, and I've read quite a lot of Goosebumps, but I don't think I've ever read that.
I've never read the horror. I thought that was just like a TV thing, but I've read most of
No,
those.
it's like I said, it's basically the slightly more adult, like older teenager version of Goosebumps.
Right. Right. I read mostly ghostly. It was fine.
I didn't know Mostly Ghostly was based on R.L. Stein.
Yeah, it's a book series.
Because
Although,
I only remember the Disney Channel movie that had Arwen from Sweet Life in it.
yeah, movies based off the book series. Also, I found out R.L. Stein wrote a Man Thing comic for Marvel. Apparently, it wasn't good, but
See, that surprises me because you would think of all the people in the world who could write a good Man Thing story, it would be R.L. Stein.
okay. Okay, so there's Fear Street book series, there's the Horrorland book series. For the record,
I
they
did
are
I did
still
know I did
existing.
know they spun off Horrorland into its own thing.
Yeah, it does have certain elements of other Goosebumps books that are just connected with Horrorland, which is cool. I have actually read some of them, and I really like. Again, if you wanted, although I think Fear Street, like for Netflix, they did do a adaptation, like movie series of that.
I remember they did like several spin-offs of the Horrorland books within the Goosebumps, and I've read one or two of those, but I don't think I ever read the actual Horrorland books.
It's just there is a lot of things. Hold on. He wrote a book. Wrote a book series, or book series of mostly ghostly.
I am surprised.
There are book series. It's just Goosebumps. I don't think you make a syndicated show. That's an anthology series. Make more sense to make an anthology series out of that.
Well, no, you could do you could do one, but you'd have to basically build the connective tissue from the ground up.
Yeah. Mm.
And it would take a lot of love
But I do
and
think there are
fandom
other
of
series
the
that are
original
kind of.
Goosebumps books.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. So.
No, but what I was saying is you could build a like long running storyline where all the Goosebumps stories take place in the same universe. But it would take a lot of love and a lot of fandom of the original books, and you'd have to know exactly where to. You'd basically have to do with the Goosebumps series what Stephen King did with his Dark Tower series, and find where the stories would connect. Which some of the stories you can connect easier because some of the stories had sequels. Like Night of the Living Dummy had like 5 different sequels. Monster Blood had 2 or 3. I know Say Cheese and Die had a couple. Horrorland had several, and so on. So the possibility is there to actually do a what if all the Goosebumps stories took place in the same universe. You could actually almost do a like Friday the 13th the series style thing where someone went around collecting all the like supernatural MacGuffins from each of the books. Like you could have someone who locked away the magical MacGuffins of the R.L. Stine universe. It'd be pretty interesting, actually.
But like I said, there are also other series that could be syndicated because they do run through. They have stories through them, like the Rotten School series, which it's basically just like it's the story of kids at a boarding school. A lot of crazy adventures. I've read a few of the books. I never got to finish the whole series. Or Horrorland, which does take influence of like certain things. That actually does connect a lot of certain things to Horrorland. That's like the connecting point.
Yeah, so the raw material is there to have a story where all the Goosebumps stuff takes place in the same universe.
Yeah.
You just have to be very not only smart and dedicated, but also a big fan of the original series. And I just don't see much fandom here of the original Goosebumps series.
It more or less just feels like you take the name and just. Don't get me wrong, I don't mind the original. Well, originality.
You know what's a better version of what I think they're trying to do here? You remember the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark movie? They did kind of the same thing where they tried to connect everything and make everything take place in the same universe. But that one had Guillermo del Frickin' Toro behind it, so it was, by its very nature, better.
That one.
Jack-o'-lanterns.
Give me a second.
Are you okay?
Get the nurse!
This is all connected. He's getting revenge for what our parents did to him.
I get those goosebumps every time. Oh my god, we're murder nepo babies. You come around.
What the fuck? Did they seriously just turn this into a 13 Reasons Why rip?
I have no fucking idea, man. It feels like
it seriously feels like they're Riverdale-ing it for no good fucking reason.
Yeah, like I don't know, like it feels so empty, right?
Like, and moreover, who's the killer gonna be? Is it gonna be Slappy? Because I know Slappy is the one everyone keeps revisiting a lot.
There's a spirit that is possessing the teacher dude that we saw at the beginning. That was shown. So I don't fucking know. Also,
this is so depressing, actually.
Often, even with small franchises, let alone large ones, people get all sorts of things leading to breaking canon anyways, and casual fans sometimes notice like that hyperspace ram.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but this, yeah, I don't know what I'm supposed to feel with this at all.
I feel insulted is what I fucking feel.
I'm more
You
just
could
confused. Thing.
you could have just created your own freaking franchise, but no, you had to use the name Goosebumps and then not do any of the Goosebumps lore. I'm actually pissed off
Honestly,
now.
I would have loved, like, again, nothing against Goosebumps, but it has had its time, like with the 90s, right? And like I said, there are other books that, again, if you want to do a syndicated story, and not, one with a story throughout,
But even
there
then, the
are
tone
other
would still
books
be
that Valentine
wrong.
has written that could work better.
Even if they used Horrorland or Mostly Ghostly, the tone of this would still be wrong. They're basically trying to turn it into a like young adult YA series like Legacies or Originals or 13 Reasons Why or whatever. They're basically turning it into a bad CW show for no good fucking reason.
Actually, I thought Originals was really good for the most part.
Originals is pretty good. Legacies was also okay. I did remember watching that. Legacies was also okay. And I don't actually hate Riverdale, to be fair. Like, there's a reason why everything tries to rip it off. It's because it actually did some stuff right. But, yeah, I don't know why they, like, none of the Goosebumps lore is appearing, and I actually feel sort of insulted. Because it feels almost like the people who made this are saying the Goosebumps lore isn't good enough to make a show. Which, fuck you.
I'll be fully honest. There's only really one Goosebumps story that I would love to see redone today, just because of the climate of it all, or even just a sequel to it. Attack of the Mutants. Just given like how every given today.
Given how the superhero genre has blown up.
Yeah. How that.
Yeah, I could see a modern day rip on Night of the Mutant, or yeah, that would be good, or Attack of the Mutant, but Jack-o'-lanterns.
Right. Let me mute myself real quick.
What's going on?
It's obvious you know. That's why all of this is happening to us.
I'm waiting, we have no choice. This ends now. Run! It's time.
Who the fuck are these characters?
Come with me.
Seriously, who the fuck are these Riverdale / 13 Reasons Why stand-ins, and why should I care? Who are these characters? I'm trying to think of characters who died in the Goosebumps series who could have had children that maybe these are descendants of, but like the fuck. The serious fuck. Yeah, Jack-o'-lanterns.
I get those goosebumps every time.
Oh my god, we need to talk.
Why does James smell like watermelon Jolly Ranchers?
I was just gonna say.
Okay, here's the other thing. They could have, like, okay, maybe R.L. Stine doesn't have a monopoly on the term Goosebumps, so they could have done something called Goosebumps, made it very clear that it has nothing to do with R.L. Stine, and everything would be fine. But they actually used the Goosebumps font, the one that's very specifically R.L. Stine's font. So somehow this 13 Reasons Why wannabe, or what's the other show that ABC Family did? That featured like some generic ass teenagers in a high school setting.
I don't know. I don't watch TV.
What the fuck is that show called? It's not 13 Reasons Why, because that one actually had an actual ongoing plot. What's the other one? Keep thinking of. It's not 10 Things I Hate About You. What is it called? Fuck. But yeah, it's basically that fucking show that I can't think of the name of. And yet they're
Elementary.
Hmm?
I don't. I'm just trying to think of some.
Yeah, I don't remember what it's called, and it's gonna piss me off that I can't remember what it's called. But for some reason, they're basically doing a rip on that show, and they're calling it Goosebumps, and they are definitely referencing the R.L. Stine books because they're using the Goosebumps font. So, like, it could have just as easily been something called Goosebumps that had obviously nothing to do with R.L. Stine, and most of our criticism would be false. But they're obviously drawing some kind of parallel to Goosebumps on purpose. So what the fuck?
Last thing,
Yep, last thing.
kind of more positive thing, which is just a discussion thing.
Hmm.
Just so you have a visual aid here. Monster Heroes. So the kind of discussion I wanted to have here was like, why do Monster Heroes work? And for the record, I guess terminology, if we're supposed to set terms of set a specific term here. Monster Hero or Monster Super.
Defining your terms. Go ahead.
Yeah. Defining the term here, monster superhero specifically is obviously a creature of standard supernatural lore or folklore, I guess, that is portrayed as a superhero in the fact that they do like superhero things like save lives and stuff, and more or less it is part of like the Kids in Tights crowd type of like superheroes.
But their actual lore comes from the supernatural horror genre. So like Blade, Hellboy, Man Thing, Swamp Thing, Werewolf by Night, Vampire by Night, Into the Living Mummy, outside of Marvel and DC, Fangface.
DC iVampire. Anything about that one?
Or the movie I, Frankenstein, if anyone remembers that one, where they literally turned Frankenstein's monster into a superhero. Which, I mean, to be fair, is not impossible to do, because the theme that most people overlook when it comes to the original Frankenstein novel is Victor Frankenstein wanted to create the perfect being, and he actually succeeded. It's just his own prejudices and the quote-unquote ugliness of the creature that prevent him from seeing the fact that he actually succeeded in creating the perfect being. And through that perfect being being abused, it turned into the monster everyone thought it was.
So how do monster superheroes work? It's like my first question. Like, because in my idea of like how they work, obviously is like they are kind of the expansion of a specific type of universe or the focus, depending,
Hmm.
and kind of show or kind of like that bridge between like obviously the classic superheroic and the supernatural side of the universe.
Well, I think one of the ways it works is I think there's something people like, or there's something we need in the idea that not everything that looks ugly or scary is evil. I think we like the idea of there being something that is made of the same stuff as the things that go bump in the night, who, to borrow the BPRD phrase, bump back and actually act as protectors to humanity. There's your
Yeah.
Hellboys, there's your Werewolf by Nights. The idea that monster doesn't necessarily equate to evil, or supernatural doesn't necessarily equate to evil. So you can have a being who is very much, under normal circumstances, a horror character who who actually um who actually acts as a bulwark against the things that go bump in the night. And I know I'm a bit narcissistic here, but I do want to point out that in the Lionheart universe, we have several of these. It's almost a running theme in the Lionheart universe. There are so many quote unquote superheroes um who are supernatural monsters of some description or other. Be it the
Yeah.
Jersey Devil, be it the golem that actually inspired Frankenstein's monster, be it a gremlin.
No, that's not in the line.
Didn't we stick Frankenstein XP on the cryptics?
No, that's
I thought we did.
the other universe. That's the other
Oh,
universe.
okay, but in any case, and then of course even one of the soon to become main characters, myself insert, Raven Lazarus Macbeth. He literally is um he literally is the kind of thing that would be the villain of a horror movie under normal circumstances.
Right.
But
But
by virtue of his particular backstory, he's basically the one who tidies up the horror movie scenarios or prevents them from going bad
so
ahead of time.
yeah. I also think it's different from like the more casual or the standard of superheroes, which are like very, you know, uh, they don't look. It's just visually, it's very much more different, and of some ways you could argue more appealing. I think compared to like standard superheroes.
I think there's certainly more levels of complexity to a monster hero or a supernatural hero than there is to a standard like metahuman or mutant or something along those lines. And even then, even in the cases of the mutants, like the X-Men, you do have the occasional character who does kind of straddle the line, like Nightcrawler. Everyone thought was a demon, um, in his home village, and so on and so forth. And there are other characters like that in the X-Men as well, but that just aren't springing to my mind at this particular moment.
We're kind of moving on to my next question. What do you think draws people to monster superheroes more, or not more, but when people what would draw someone like generally to a monster superhero?
Um, that I couldn't tell you, although off the top of my head, the first thing that comes to my mind is the idea of something that belongs to the night side, for lack of a better phrase, acting like acting like someone you could sit down and have a beer with. I think that's one of the reasons why Hellboy, why HB is so popular. Although I will say I like Abe Sapien better than I do HB, and that's no shade to HB, but the thing about Hellboy is I think Hellboy is actually the least interesting part of his own universe, even though he's nominally the main character of said universe. There's usually a lot more interesting things going on in the background or the side of the Hellboy universe than what HB himself is doing.
Um, and like arguably, I'd also say like more. I mean, not more so, but I think there is a little more of a thing with like monster superheroes that you really get to delve more into like the discussion and topic of like humanity in a way.
Because how can we differentiate something like Swamp Thing or Man Thing from the Creature of the Black Lagoon or something along those lines? I would also posit that maybe some of the appeal is the idea of something big and scary and powerful can be friendly, it can be your buddy basically. I mean, even outside of the superhero context, that's why characters like Casper the Friendly Ghost work, or again Fangface. Most people don't frickin' remember Fangface. I'm trying to jog everyone's memory of Fangface because Fangface was cool. But or even a movie like, if anyone remembers the what was the franchise? Starred Michael J. Fox. He was a werewolf kid.
Teen Wolf.
Thank you. Why the fuck was Teen Wolf completely absent from my brain? But Teen Wolf and Teen Wolf 2, the idea of, particularly in those cases, like, instead of focusing on the horrific aspects of being a werewolf, it focused on the like superhumanity of the werewolf. Like, of course, in both the original and in the sequel, Big Wolf on Campus, it focused on basically werewolfism turning you into an instant jock, and how that could act, how both for the person who was afflicted with it and for the people who were friends of that person, that can actually be a positive thing. Like, again, HB is the kind of guy you can just have a beer with, even though he's a 6'5", 350-pound demon.
Let's branch off. Out of curiosity, how common a statement is after you're done? Main character of something being one of the less interesting parts of a story is my section. Branch our last question.
It depends on the story. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes it, like, okay, for another example, completely kind of out of this framework though. Everyone who was a 90s or early 2000s kid remembers with fondness Jackie Chan Adventures, and yet most of the things people remember fondly about Jackie Chan Adventures, the world building, the magic, that stuff revolves around Uncle. Jackie Chan himself is actually the least interesting of the main cast in Jackie Chan Adventures, because they are sort of the fish out of water character, or the character that by their very nature has to be the most grounded. You almost end up being drawn to the side characters who actually are more knowledgeable, more skilled, more powerful. In the same way as Luke is one of the least interesting characters in Star Wars. Yoda is at least for me, Yoda is far more interesting, and for a lot of people, for some reason, Han Solo is more interesting. like I say, I gravitate to Yoda more than any other character, more than any other main character in the Star Wars franchise. And my absolute favorite character in the entire expanded universe is Mother Talzin, surprising absolutely no one. But yeah, Luke and Anakin are actually kind of boring, all things considered. The worlds around them are more interesting, and I think the same is true for a bunch of franchises or a bunch of characters. By the very nature of the main character having to be a clueless everyman insert, they don't actually have the cool powers or the knowledge or the mystique that makes them cool.
I mean, extended universe with balance, or like you got some cool. But besides the point, moving back to the topic at hand. And I think also with like, again, I'm not trying to be I'm not trying to like, what's the word? I'm looking for that. I'm not trying to discredit standard superhero stuff because I love that, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think with monster superheroes, you get kind of a more variety than standard superheroes, kind of.
Well, with the darker kind of supernatural vibes that these sorts of characters always bring, you do actually get a more how to phrase it, like there's more of a dark underbelly to the character by its very nature, and that allows for a lot more adult storytelling. Whereas there's only so far you can push a purer than driven snow paragon, like, and I know you're gonna hate me for this, but
Dalton,
for like,
that's not what I mean.
well, I know that's not what you mean. I was adding to it. But yeah, I think part of the appeal of monster heroes is they're sort of by their very nature edgy. Like even a more mainstream one like Raven, who is a half demon sorceress, they're allowed to go to darker places than would a paragon like Superman be. Because characters like that have to always on some level be in the light somewhere. Like they have to be the shining example on the hill, whereas there's a fun mystique to things that live in the shadows.
All right, this last one in this chat, feel free to add this, but this is more just an opinion thing. Favorite monster superhero?
It's so hard to narrow it down because this is literally like my area of special interest is the like supernatural side of things. So it's so freaking hard to narrow it down.
Can I start so you have some time to think about it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if technically he counts as a monster superhero. This is kind of like one of the first superheroes I got into. I was getting into like comics and stuff. Spawn.
Yeah, I'd say he counts.
Yeah.
I mean, he's literally Hellspawn. In the same way, Ghost Rider probably also counts.
Yeah. Well, I also think technically a ghoul in a way, or some type of revenant.
Well, he's a Hellspawn. He's semi kind of a demon, kind of.
Right. But I've talked about Spawn before, a long while ago. Like one of my favorites. But his story, from what I've able to gather, but I haven't really read it, but it is a story of redemption. And is it possible for a soul that is so damned? And it's just really good, and it's very interesting. He's human in a lot of ways, despite everything around him is crazy, supernatural, political conspiracies and shit.
Mm-hmm.
Then I am mostly going off like the cartoon from the 90s, which is amazing and really kind of, I think, set a standard for Spawn.
The Keith David one, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. But by the way, for those that don't know, Keith David is voicing the character again in video games. Ever since Mortal Kombat and Injustice have included Spawn as a character.
Justice didn't include him. It was just Mortal Kombat.
Was it? Because I'm pretty sure I've seen him in Injustice cutscenes.
No, it was Hellboy.
Maybe
Hellboy for Injustice. Mortal Kombat.
maybe someone modded him in. I don't know, but honestly, now I just want to see HB and Spawn go at it. I feel bad for HB though, because he's probably out of his weight class fighting Spawn, if they ever did fight.
Yeah. You got one though?
Hmm.
You got one?
Again, this is really hard because like my entire fandom is in the like mystical or supernatural adjacent side of things. Because it is really freaking hard to narrow it down. I mean, selfishly, I am fond of characters that you and I have created for the Lionhearted universe, because, like I say, we do use the monster turned hero or hero, like the monster hero trope quite a lot. Like a sizable, probably majority of our characters are some version or other of that.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, I really like our version of the Jersey Devil, and I really, really, really like Moth Girl. Also our version of Dracula is amazing, but that's neither here nor there.
No. Official stuff. Just so like we have it narrowed down here.
I can't narrow it down. That was my out. I was citing the work we've done. There are just too many awesome supernatural characters to narrow it down.
You want me to narrow it down for you a little more? Need I help?
I mean, you can try.
Okay, let's go DC.
Fuck.
Saying that, I just realized how expansive the supernatural side of DC is, more so than.
This is the fucking problem.
Okay. Let me backtrack. Let's go Marvel then. I feel like that does have a very significantly smaller supernatural.
Okay. Well, smaller but still pretty expansive.
Okay.
I mean, the obvious like basic bitch answer is Doctor Strange, but I feel like that's cheating a little bit.
A little bit. Plus, he's always your go-to. So.
Yeah. So I will attempt to pick one that doesn't get nearly as much play then. I mean, Damian Hellstrom is interesting. Werewolf by Night, especially after the TV show. Which, by the way, if you guys haven't seen the Werewolf by Night Marvel Holiday Special, you are missing out. It is really, really, really freaking good.
It's not a holiday special. It's a special presentation.
Well, yes, but it's specifically supposed to be Marvel's equivalent of like a Halloween special, in the same way that the Guardians special was their Christmas thing. But
yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, the Halloween, the MCU Halloween special that focuses on Elsa Bloodstone, Werewolf by Night, and the Man Thing is just freaking awesome. like I say, Damien Hallstrom is also really cool. I'm trying to think of other ones. Obviously Doctor Strange, but again, that over that sort of overextends the definition a little bit too much. Into the Living Mummy is one I wished would get more play. He's probably not going to in the MCU because we already have Moon Knight, and he's probably going to fill the role if we ever do a Midnight Suns. But Into the Living Mummy is cool. I think Blade is actually slightly overrated.
Who?
Blade is slightly overrated.
Fair enough. It's still weird now because Ultimate Spider-Man, I know that show is terrible. Don't remind me. I'm aware.
Mm-hmm.
Did a Howling Commandos.
Yeah.
The thing where like it was actual monsters and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they had Into Living Mummy. Granted, he was turned into a villain. So another thing I've seen of the story of Encanto when I've done research on him myself.
Mm-hmm.
He's not. And that's weird because I've also noticed like the Infinite Crisis for CW did that with Sargon the Sorcerer and turned him into like just a one-off villain.
Mm-hmm.
It weirds me out that they take lesser-known like heroes and turn them into villains for some reason.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that's topic for another day, I suppose. I don't really have anything else to really say. You don't?
No, not really.
Alright, so with that, folks, I want to say bye, adios, aloha, avideze, sayonara, peace, and
I'm trying to think of something more festive to say. See you on the night side.